There's a lot of useless garbage in Metaphor Refantazio. Most importantly for this challenge, items. But maybe there are some hidden gems amongst the trash. Items that can turn the tide of battle and lead us to victory. Can you beat Metaphor Refantazio with only items? I'll clarify more of the rules as we go, but basically once items are available, I will only have 3 options in battle. Use an item, pass my turn, or defend. Once items are available, by the way, is your cue to write a very literal comment about not being able to beat the game with only items. I don't care. Go away. You know how this works. As the tactician and tosser, I name myself Riku. After our wagon is attacked, we're thrust into the desert and attacked by a giant snake. In real life, my literal dream scenario, but the protagonist prefers something a little smaller. So he turns tall to avoid a dilated sphincter and runs. Ironically though, when asked his strength, the protag says,
I can take a lot of punishment.
Right. Given items will be our only source of damage, I call our protagonist hoarders. If you walk in front of the camera, this isn't gonna work. Cat. All right, I have a cat in my lap now. That's official. We start the game with almost no item stock and literally 0 attack items as we push through the door into our first combat zone. I run past this big eggy boy and dodge this one to grab my first medicinal herb. And after grabbing a bunch more, I dash all the way to the game's first boss. This boss, however, is not meant to be beaten, and our inevitable defeat awakens the innate potential of hoarders and unlocks our first archetype, the Seeker. For now, sadly, the Seeker of items, since we have no offensive items. But nonetheless, the protagonist uses his newfound potential to blow down the Homo Gorleo, and this gets us one step closer to actually starting the challenge. And while I wasn't able to beat him with only items right now, we'll circle back to that later. For now though, I continue the journey, dashing past every random encounter I can and unlocking Stroll's warrior archetype, which helps us not at all. The next boss too is sadly toppled without an item in sight. Again, we'll come back to him later. But for now, the mage archetype is unlocked. And then we actually make some progress, because the merchant after this battle has our first attack items, 5 ice chunks. And it's not much, but it at least lets me be a little more loyal to the challenge when fighting the next boss, Homo Fulquilo. This guy is weak against ice. That means I can use every single ice chunk on him to get extra turns. And now that I actually have attack items, I think it's high time to tell you a little bit more about them, because attack items are wacky and powerful in this game. Every attack item has 3 components. The first is an element, just literally one of the 6 magic elements in the game, or Almighty, the 7th element. The second component is the damage the item does. Most items do 100, 150, or 200 damage, and there are a few that can do more. We'll talk about those later. And the third component is single target or all targets. And while you might assume that high damage plus all targets is always good, it isn't always the best option. And this is because of the way that elements work in Metaphor. Because Metaphor operates off of a press turn system. At the beginning of each turn, you start off with a number of turns equal to your number of living characters in battle. If you hit an enemy with a weakness, including with an attack item, you get an extra turn. But on the flip side, if you hit an enemy with an element they negate, you lose a turn. And the same goes for missing with an attack. Fortunately though, item damage cannot miss, so that little bit of variance is removed. And finally, if you hit an enemy with an element it reflects, you lose all of your turns. And later, when I have more items, I will show you even more complications of this system. But for now, every time I use an ice chunk, I get an extra turn. And then, very quickly, the ice chunks run out. But guys, we'll come back to this boss. Oh, I didn't think I was gonna die here. Wow. Okay, listen guys, this is where I bring back the death counter, a staple of my prior challenge runs because I suck. And for a second time, I died. And again. So ultimately, I switch my main character to the warrior archetype because it resists fire. And with that change, I'm able to fry this chicken in short order. And then I dash to the city where our first item shop awaits. But wait! I could have run directly to Grand Trad, but all of a sudden, my chat decided to sabotage me. They started donating money to have me poke and stroke the dragon, which is basically a death sentence, but my suffering sure is entertaining. Once my chat finally gets bored of wasting their money to watch me die, though, I dodge some falling rocks and dash on to the city. New outfit! Don't worry about it. And as I enter Grand Trad, you might think that the world is about to unfold before me, but there's a slight delay before I can procure my launchables. Not Launchly. We don't do that. Sadly though, as I alluded to, attack items aren't yet available. But what is available is the mag exchanger, who will take my magla and in exchange provide me with cold hard cash. But I don't use it quite yet. Because before I make that trade, I progress the main game a bit more. I beat down some skeletons, connoiter with hypergassy Hulkenburps, and bash our bestie Grius. And with that, the itemless portion of this challenge concludes. So write your hate comment now or forever hold your peace. The sensation of progressing to the next section of this video rivals the feeling of a good shit. It's absolute relief, because after parking my ass on this bench but not taking a dump because that would be gross, my prayers are answered and the item shop is ready to accommodate my love of collection. So I sell every item and weapon I can, and I use every cent of money I have to purchase items. Each of these items deals 100 damage, and at this point in the game, that's quite sizable. But that's not all, because very soon I'll have a way to increase this damage in a huge way, which I'll discuss in just a minute. I buy 4 of each item and I have just over 2,000 gold remaining, but rather than buy more items, I hold on to my precious cash for now, because there are a couple of quests I can complete for more gold, as well as some archetype points. I end my first night in town by cooking some food. This creates a roast that will restore health and allow me to save money for more offensive items. The next morning, I complete one more quest and my wisdom rises to level 2. And this is absolutely crucial, because wisdom level 2 unlocks the most important character in the game, Brigitte. Well, actually, I lied. It only unlocks the quest we need to perform to unlock Brigitte. So in preparation, I head back to the item shop that night and grab a bunch more ice chunks. And then I head to Beliga Corridor. I dash past all the enemies, grab every item I can, and head straight into the boss fight against the Minotaur. Fortunately, he's weak against the ice, so I'm able to get a total of 6 attacks for 600 damage. Things are looking good.
I'm sorry.
And everyone's dead. Why didn't I equip armor, guys? So take 2. In addition to equipping armor, I move my tossers into the back row to decrease the amount of physical damage they'll take. And even more importantly, rather than attacking 6 times, I attack 3 times and have everyone defend. The Minotaur only attacks Hoarders and not the entire party, and Hoarders survives. After healing though, the repeat performance is not nearly as successful and both Stroll and Hoarders are knocked out. And with only one gassy gal left over, I die. I try to use a stunning arrow on the next try with the hope that it'll paralyze him, but that is unsuccessful. Twice. His next attack once again takes down Stroll and Hoarders, so we're back to the drawing board. And the drawing board immediately gets wrecked. Not even freaking close. So it appears that the only way to get through this boss is a bit of a grind. I initially try to kill a blue elemental, but before I show you how it went, let me clarify one of the rules of this challenge. In Metaphor Refantazio, there's a significant amount of overworld combat. If an enemy is weaker than you, you can immediately knock it out with attacks. And I will be allowing that because the challenge is literally impossible without it. You will see that later. It's pain. However, if an enemy is evenly matched or stronger than your characters, whacking an enemy a few times results in the enemy getting stunned and taking some damage prior to the battle starting. And while I'm allowed to stun enemies, I'm not allowed to take advantage of that extra damage in battle. Instead, I just have to click the squad battle button to engage my enemies, like this blue elemental. He's weak against fire, so I hit him with 3 flammabottles and 3 other random elemental items. Unfortunately though, this doesn't finish off the elemental and it runs away. So this method of grinding is not viable in this challenge. Well, not yet anyway. So I reload my save to regain those lost items. I then start to grind on the butterflies on an earlier floor of the dungeon, which are weaker than my characters and can thus be killed without entering battle. However, that grind would literally take forever, so I reload an even earlier save and head back to Grand Trad. There, I buy some armor, which I probably should have done earlier, and I head into the next story area, the Catacombs. Not to progress the story quite yet, but for the sake of slaughtering some monster doggos and getting more magla, and perhaps more importantly, making friends with Katrina, who yields the Brawler archetype, perhaps better known as the Monk, which I turn Hoarders and Stroll into. So with that done, I exit the Catacombs and head right back to the Beliga Corridor, as well as its boss fight, the Minotaur. I'm in danger! adventure. And I kind of have an issue here. The Brawler class resists strike damage, which is good, but the Minotaur's single target attack is of the slash element. So on the first attack, Stroll dies and I have to start over. And on the next try, Hoarders falls and we're once again back to square one. So new strategy, or rather old strategy repeated, I have everyone hit with one ice chunk, all of my characters guard, and the Minotaur kills no one. Then I rinse and repeat, except this time only 2 of my characters guard and Hoarders heals Stroll. Sadly though, this time the Minotaur defeats Hulkenbelch. However, I have 2 Balm of Life items, so I just revive her. However, I mess up my turn order and I have to try again anyway. Hulkenberps dies on the first turn of the next try and gets revived, but the Minotaur manages to kill 2 party members on his next turn, so next try. Hulkenberps dies again, gets revived again, then Hoarders dies and gets revived on the next turn, but rather than attacking, the Minotaur now takes aim and uses charge, powering up its next attack. So I damage him and prepare for the worst. But for some reason, the Minotaur now uses Reckless Charge, removing his buffs he just placed on himself, and then uses a normal physical attack on Hulkenberps, and she easily deflects it. So given that everyone is now at high health, I have them all damage the Minotaur and defend, and the Minotaur once again takes out no one. And on his next turn, he does a repeat performance of his prior turn, charging up and taking aim. And I think this is because my characters are not mages. When I beat this game with only mages, this boss was terrible because he gets angry and actually is able to mobilize that charge. But when you don't have mages, he can't do that. He just wastes the turn. Anyway, once again, he dispels all of his own buff attacks and whacks Stroll, doing very little damage. So with 5 more attacks, I'm able to take down the Minotaur. And with that, we head back to Grand Trad, where the entire challenge is about to change completely. Because my next task is literally the most important one in the entire challenge. I return to Grand Trad and befriend Brigitte. Brigitte is the single most important character in this challenge, and the reason for that is her archetype, the merchant. More on that in a bit, because before I can take advantage of her archetype, it's time for a little shopping spree. I grab as many Flammabottles and Luminospheres, fire and light elemental attack items respectively, as my hot little hands can hold. And with that, I head back into the catacombs. My first destination is one of the shrines that spawns unlimited enemies. Here I have one goal: get enough Magla to unlock the merchant class. Initially just for Hoarders though, because unlocking the merchant class on Hoarders allows me to experience the first advantage of the merchant, and it's a big one: cold hard cash. So now I have no problems with money as long as I do a little bit of grinding. And the grind I do also allows me to unlock the merchant on my other characters. And with my merchants at level 5, they have access to the passive skill Trader's Summit. This will increase the effect of all items used, and the effect is increased for every member of the party who is the same archetype as the user. So now my 100 damage attack items do 150 damage. Still not enough to take out an elemental, but don't worry, this ability is only going to get stronger. This newfound power though allows me to take on the next mini boss battle against a soldier and 4 skeletons. All of the skeletons are weak against light, and I'm immediately able to take out 2 of them in the first round. Unfortunately, the skeleton mage has fire spells, which my merchants are weak against. And while the attack doesn't kill Hoarders, it does give the enemies an extra turn. However, rather than killing a character, the general boosts his party's defense, which is a relief, because attack items do not care about defense at all. They always do the same amount of damage regardless of enemy defense. This allows me to take out one of the remaining skeletons and heal. And I get extra healing because of my merchants. Then I continue to deal some damage on the general. And even though he resists fire, he still takes 150 damage from each Flammabottle. The general then makes the mistake of lowering my team's attack on the next turn, which again has no effect, and the skeleton fails to kill a character with his next attack. So on my next turn, I use a light attack on the skeleton to kill it, and I get an extra turn, and then I use Flammabottles on the remaining general. And because he's now the last man standing, his AI changes. He uses Mage Omniscience to focus his power, but does no damage on this turn. That allows Hulkenberps to throw one more Flammabottle and defeat him. And while that mini boss wasn't a huge challenge, the next one is going to be rough. I have to fight 5 of these floaty phantom things. Fortunately, they have a weakness to light, so I'm able to nab an extra turn immediately. Unfortunately though, Hulkenberps enters this battle cursed. That's something I should have addressed before I opened this can of floating worms. So when she attacks, attacks, she takes recoil damage. So I take out the first one and heal her status before continuing. But after dealing damage, they reapply the curse status to Hulkenberps, meaning my work has been reversed. And then she just dies to a wind attack anyway. So that's my cue to restart the battle. This time I heal Hulkenberg right away, take out one of the floating wormies, and heavily damage another. Sadly, they then hex hoarders and immediately take them out with a dark attack, which reminds me of one of the super weird mechanics of this game. Hexed characters take extra damage from dark skills. I didn't see this explained anywhere. It just happens and then all of a sudden you're dead. Anyway, the other two characters survive, I revive Hoarders, and then I have Hoarders defend. Ultimately, my characters all survive the next round, and because Hulkenberps is cursed again, I have her pass. That effectively saves her turn. This means I can kill the next floating worm, cure Hulkenberps' hex, and heal some HP to the party with fairy dust. But still, no one dies on the next enemy phase, and I use the same strategy, taking out another wormy in the process and leaving just two. Unfortunately, Stroll is taken out on the next turn, and I'm out of revival items. So I take out one more wormy and have Hoarders defend. And rather than attack, the wormy just summons another wormy, dealing 0 damage in the process. But this means I can just kill the original wormy and once again leave just one on the field, and it summons again. So this time I take a risk. I kill one wormy with my first 3 actions and damage the other for my 4th. And this time he doesn't summon a friend. Instead, he just tries to curse my characters, which fails. This allows me to take him out with 2 more pinwheels and move on to the next mini-boss, a group of 3 soldiers. And of course, as someone who has on multiple occasions started making bread without an ounce of flour in the house, I do this without healing Stroll. So he's at 1 HP. But I heal him as soon as possible, and in an act of desperation, I use a mindless mallet on the mage in the middle. And it works, causing the forget status. That will prevent the mage from using any skills. That means he skips his turn. Not that it matters, since his friend uses a fire attack, which all of my merchants are weak against. That means the enemy team gets an extra turn, which they use to take out Hulkenberps. So since I have no revival items left, I just start over. And this time I heal Stroll and then immediately find out that the physical boyo is weak against ice. So with that revelation, I start the battle over one more time, because with that weakness, I can hit the physical guy with ice 3 times to get extra turns. Then I can heal Stroll and finish him off with a Thunderstone and then lay down some wind damage on the general. Fortunately, there's no fire attack this time, so on the next round I'm able to hit with some ice chunks to get extra turns and then lay down more wind damage once the minion is dead. I end my turn by healing just in case things go off the rails. The general then uses a dark attack, but it's not strong enough to have significant impact, and I just lay down damage in anticipation of a big hit. But just like in the last mini-boss battle, the general uses Mage Omniscience to charge up instead of doing damage. Once again, a huge mistake, so I'm able to use 2 more attack items to finish the battle. So I ascend the tower and reach the boss's chamber. Sadly though, I definitely don't have enough attack items to beat the boss. Fortunately though, I'm able to leave the area, head back to Grand Trad, and use my newfound wealth to purchase a metric ton of attack items. Primarily, I purchase luminous spheres. And then we head right back into the catacombs to fight the boss of this dungeon, Zorba. Zorba starts off alone, meaning I can just hit him with some items. He mainly attacks by summoning, so on each of his turns, he'll summon a minion, and then that minion will attack. However, his minions are weak against light attacks, meaning I can deal some damage to his minion 4 times to take it out, and then deal some damage to Zorba. I do occasionally weave in a heal, but largely he does the same thing every turn. Until his health gets low anyway, at which time he attacks twice rather than summoning, which is actually a huge mistake because now I can focus all of my damage on him, and ultimately I'm able to defeat him with a few more attacks. But as it turns out, Zorba himself is just a minion, and the true final boss is just around the corner, the big Yoki handy plate thing, also known as Eggy. And my first round against Eggy is miserable with 2 deaths, so ultimately I die. Unfortunately, Eggy has light spells available, which my merchants are weak against.
Ooh, that's bad.
So before I try again, I formulate a plan. I transform my characters into brawlers to get rid of those weaknesses. And you may be wondering how that will affect my item damage. Well, I can take the Trader Summit skill from the merchant and equip it on the brawler class. But sadly, only for hoarders, since I don't have enough magla to transfer it. So as long as my characters are all brawlers, he'll get the full bonus on item damage but lose the downsides of the merchant. So on my second turn, the turn 1 goes a lot better. I'm able to knock down Eggy on turn 2, making the core vulnerable to attacks. When it rises though, there are some nasty fellows in there ready to attack. And while I try to take them out, it's a fool's errand. I don't have enough damage to do it, and they just deal some big PP damage to my entire party. So the hands rebuild the egg and the cycle begins anew. But then I see that I made a mistake. The hands are extremely dangerous, and I realize that they're weak against fire. So I restart, and this time I knock out the egg on the first move of my second turn. This means I can lay down some damage on the heart. So the minions reappear, and rather than try to kill them, I just have the party defend. And now I start attacking the arms. And the heart uses one of its turns to cast Forget on hoarders. Interestingly though, in this challenge, that status effect is completely ineffectual. Forget makes characters unable to use skills. That's it. But none of my characters will use a single skill in this or any battle. So I just keep destroying the hands with fire. The boss then wastes its entire next turn trying to inflict the Forget status. That means now I can take out hand number 2 and start attacking the egg, which goes down relatively quickly. And when it regains balance, Gallica, our fairy friend, offers to knock down the minions for us. But to keep the challenge confined to items, I say no. Instead, I just have all of my characters defend. Now though, with the arms destroyed, the egg can only regenerate 70 HP. That means one attack is enough to take it down again, and the cycle once again repeats. But on the next rebuilding, the boss uses Soul Scream to get extra actions. Instead of actually taking action though, the boss tries to inflict Forget, which fails and tries to whack me with its hands. However, because they're amputated, they can't hit anything. That means the boss loses its final turn counter and it's back to me. So I destroy the eggshell, and a couple more flamma bottles arrests this giant heart. And with our first trial complete, we head to Martira. With the egg cracked, I decide to take a holiday to the Tradia Desert. There, I whack some doggos. Don't do that in real life. Dogs are incredible. And a big kitty comes out to play. Fortunately, he's weak against ice, and I happen to have some ice chunks lying around. On his turn, he war cries and deflates Hulkenberg's gas bubble, and I'm able to defeat the kitty on my next turn. And speaking of cute kitties, Aurora Purialis attacks my lower extremity during the boss fight, and I deliver this special message to her. Can you not destroy my feet during this live? Can you do me that favor? I need my feet. I use them to walk. I also spend a good deal of time getting to know Brigitte better. Also, that is such a nice couch. Her furniture budget must be insane. But since my furniture budget is lacking, I take on a quest from the recruitment center to line my pockets. And coincidentally, it's our next story quest, which will take us to Martira. But before we arrive, we must battle Gadot. Now, I haven't talked about the plot of this game at all, and it does play into the next battle. Basically, the king is dead, and everyone who wants to become king is competing for the vote of the people. Whoever has the most votes will ultimately become king. However, before the vote happens, the top 20 candidates are protected by the former king's magic, because of course they are. And Gadot is one of those. So in this battle, the goal is simply to defeat his retainers, because if you attack the main guy, bad things happen. The guy on the right is weak against ice, and 6 attacks bring him just a hair away from death. On the enemy phase, Gadot wastes a turn, Hulkenberg dodges an attack, and an ice strike does pretty minimal damage to hoarders. So one more ice chunk finishes off crony number 1, and sadly, crony number 2 does not share his friend's weakness, so I attack him as much as I can before the next round. Gadot wastes 2 turns this time, and the crony attacks with wind. Then I attack, and on his next turn, Gadot heals. Crony uses a wind attack, and then things take a turn. Gadot uses a light attack, gaining an extra turn for his team, and with that extra turn, crony number 2 blows down my hoarders. Phrasing? So I revive the boy, and then I use the curative coney roast I cooked way back at the beginning of the challenge to give my party a full heal. And fortunately, on the next go-around, I defeat crony number 2, and the battle comes to an end. The rest of the journey is no issue, and it's a relief to finally check into Chez Martira. And the next day, we receive the ability to teleport from town to town, meaning all of the resources from Grand Trad are still available to me. The next order of business, though, is completing Cuculus's quest, and that is 100% necessary. And to complete his quest, we have to head to another cavern to retrieve his ring. Well, I don't know if it's his, but it's a ring. Before I go, though, I make sure to purchase a new item available in Martira, binding ropes. These are crucial because they decrease the accuracy and evasion of enemies. The evasion doesn't matter because items always hit, but the accuracy debuff will make many battles far less threatening. I also need more attack items, but sadly there's no magic shop in Martira. Martira, so I have to backtrack to Grand Trads to grab my attack items. And my philosophy here is essentially the same as when I order takeout. I want a little bit of everything. And lastly, I spend some time with Brigida to further cement our budding romance. Well, that's actually not all I do. I also take an enormous dump. That's not a joke. Every Idles Day in this game, you can literally drop a bomb in the Gauntlet Runner toilet to gain an extra point of luck. And while that's not what happens when I empty my bowels in real life, it's a welcome boost and I will donate my doo-doo every time this bonus is available. But then we're off. And almost immediately we're attacked by this Tommy Lee looking motherfucker. He's able to knock out Stroll on his first turn, and on his second turn, my chat is more perceptive than I am and yells at me about it. Oh! Everyone's not in the back row, are they? You're right. You're right. Everyone should be in the back row. Anyway, I shock him to death. The abandoned tomb has a crap ton of weak enemies, and I make note of that for later since I might need to grind. But before I take advantage of them, I fight the next boss, the giant mimic. He's weak against light, so that's an easy first set of attacks. And then I let everybody defend. And defending in this game is kind of interesting, because defending doesn't just reduce damage. It also prevents your character from being inflicted by any status effects. And this chest loves to inflict sleep. So that fails, Hoarders takes an ounce of damage from a physical attack, and I repeat my actions in the next round. This time, he just attacks the entire party rather than trying to inflict sleep. But still, I hit him 3 times with light items and heal the entire team. But now, I'm vulnerable. Oh, yes! Wow, that luck! Ah, that was amazing, guys. So I have a new plan now. I use 3 binding ropes on my next round, and that leads to him missing 2 characters on his next attack. That means he once again skips his turn. So the next turn, I go full-on aggression. Sadly, the Mimic takes out Hoarders with 1 strike, leaving Strolkenberg to pick up the pieces. But funny enough, 1 more pinwheel from Stroll is enough to shut this box for good, meaning I'm able to grab Marveno's ring soon after. But here I make a huge mistake. I choose to fight a Mimic. It just seemed like a good idea at the time. And the problem isn't the fight itself. It went fine. But before I leave, I kill a bunch of weak zombies I mentioned earlier, mainly to get extra money, and this is also not the problem. But it does make me feel about 100 times worse about the problem, which I will tell you about when we get there. It's really bad. But completely unaware of this massive f*** up, I leave the tomb. Once I get back to Martira, I gain a small amount of insight into my predicament. Oh dear, yeah, I can't buy items, can I? Because the next part of the story, finding the kidnapper, requires that we immediately, without having a night phase, which is the only time an attack item shop is available, head out on a journey. And on that journey, Katarina is the first obstacle, and she has a fire weakness, so I'm able to take her out. And then we fight the sandworm, and this monster too isn't strong enough to threaten the team, though it does eat us, which is rude, even if not fatal. And the worm's innards also aren't a huge issue, going down within a few rounds. But now we enter the sandworm's nest, and in this nest I find Heisme. And once again, the first battle with Heisme is not a huge issue. He clones himself and I hit his form with a shadow until he flees. But then I have to fight him again. And this battle is the same as the prior one, except this time I run out of attack items about halfway through Heisme's health pool. So I use this last item and then I'm just dead.
I show no mercy.
Like, do I have anything that burns? That's a good question. I don't have anything that can burn.
I need to use it.
I think I'm just dead. Which means 2 things. Number 1, killing this Mimic earlier was a mistake because it depleted my items. I couldn't buy more, and I didn't have enough to beat Heisme. But second is just a weird realization. Heisme literally will not kill the protagonist in this battle. And this is because the protagonist is a child and Heisme loves children. He is literally the best character ever. But back to the point, because of my mistake and because of this, the stupidest soft lock I have ever experienced, I now have to reset the game and go back to the abandoned tomb. Oh, I hate my life. Deflated but not defeated, I beat Goddard again. And then I fight Daddy Mimic. And let me tell you, on this, I got defeated. And then a second time. And well, how about a third helping of I died? And how about a fourth? Why not? That is so serious for a stupid video game challenge. Why? Anyway, eventually I managed to kill Big Daddy Mimic. And then I grab the ring again. I burn up the cat girl. Great, she's dead. Get eaten by the worm. Get pooped out of its bumhole. and finally use my attack items to defeat Heisme. So now I can finally return to Martira and head into the sewers. In the sewers, we finally get our fourth party member, Heisme himself, and once I destroy a few doggos, I can finally take full advantage of his talents. But not before buying a bajillion more attack items because I am not
redoing bosses again.
Anyway, I immediately turn him into a merchant, just like the others. And because I now have 4 merchants instead of 3, every attack item now deals 200 damage, which represents a pretty big boost. So after fleeing from the giant shadow toddler, the party is separated and I fight the first mandatory battles of the dungeon. A few water lizard dudes taking advantage of their electric weakness to defeat them. Heisme is released from his cage next, and unfortunately his attacks still only do 100 damage. He hasn't learned the right merchant skill to increase his damage yet, but that's okay, because Hoarders and Hulkenberg are able to pick up the slack. And finally, upon Stroll's release, I try to avoid a fight with a lion, but stupid Gallica forces me to go back and destroy it with wind attacks. My least favorite fairy used to be Navi, but my mind has changed. But even worse than Navi is the baby. As the final boss of this dungeon, you might expect this big baby to be a big deal. But the big baby has a big problem, and that big problem is big binding ropes. But it's not the only problem, because part of the baby's strategy is inflicting dizzy on my characters, which makes their attacks less likely to hit, but not items, which means the baby's first turn is completely wasted. On the baby's next turn, it attacks the whole party, but Hulkenberg dodges, so no more turns for the toddler. I go on offense for the second turn and the baby focuses and gathers its power. So playing it safe, I just defend and the baby's attack isn't too bad. By the way, blocking has 2 effects. I mentioned in the Mimic fight that it prevents status effects, including knockdown, but defending also prevents your team from dodging, meaning an attack you might have evaded can now potentially kill. Or, as is the case in this battle, the attack after it, which is what takes out Stroll. But I debuff accuracy again, revive Stroll, and see a big miss on the next attack. After a while of this though, Joanna, the city's mayor and the city's resident child kidnapper, heals the baby. That gives it another chance to whack my party, which is defending. But my god, you scared me. But it doesn't kill them. And eventually, after some clutch dodges, I'm able to take down the toddler. Yep, there it is. That was beautiful. Wow. The road to the port is full of obligations, like another fight with Katarina, and opportunities, because every night I spend in the Gauntlet Runner, I'll be taking a bath to increase my agility. This will come in very handy. Agility increases evasion, and I will need to evade a lot of attacks to get through some of the later battles. In Port Brilehaven, though, I head into Luis's ship, avoid soldiers, and then incapacitate them. And once that's done, I fight the first boss on the boat, Xanth. And this is where the challenge faces its second huge roadblock. Xanth is susceptible to status effects, so I start the battle by inflicting poison with a poison stinger. That poison does 200 damage per turn. But before I continue, let me tell you how the bosses on this boat work. First of all, don't buy a boat. That's a given. Anyway, every boss battle on this ship requires you to defeat them within 3 turns. Otherwise, they call for reinforcements and it's game over. And each of my items does 200 damage. That means if I'm able to hit a weakness, I can do 800 times 2 or 1600 damage per round, and 4800 over 3 rounds. Xanth, however, has no weaknesses. Fortunately though, the poison will deal 200 damage per turn. So including poison on my first turn, my maximum possible damage I can inflict is 800. On my second and third turns, 1000. That means a maximum of 2800 damage in the best case scenario. But Xanth has 3200 HP, which means I can't deal enough damage and he calls reinforcements and I die. So that means this challenge is impossible and this video is over. Remember this guy? Well, this guy is the key to the entire challenge. Since I literally can't do enough damage to Xanth with my current items, the only option I have is to get better ones. And the way to do that is to head to the Man-Eater's Grotto, because the blobs here yield a crucial item. Lava Crystal! You guys! This is gonna work out. The lava crystals do base 200 damage. So with my boost from the merchant abilities, they will do 400 damage. Currently, the only way to get them is to grind the blobs. Unfortunately, the drop rate is abysmal. So I turn my hoarders into a thief. The field ability of the thief makes item drops far more common, and this speeds up the process significantly. And this class will be even more important later. I grind for an excruciating 3 hours. And when it's over, I have 20 lava crystals. Honestly, more precious than diamonds. So now I'm ready to sacrifice some diamonds to take down Xanth. On the first turn, I use 3 lava crystals to deal 1200 damage, and then I use a poison stinger. Over the next 3 turns, that will deal 600 damage. Fortunately, Hulkenberg blocks a critical hit, and this allows me to use 1 more lava crystal and 3 luminous spheres, dealing 1000 damage. And on Xanth's next round, Hoarders evades an attack, meaning his turn is up. So 2 lava crystals and 2 pinwheels are enough to finish him off. That's fine. That worked. I spent 4 hours total on Xanth, but because of the grind I did, the rest of the bosses in this section will be far faster. For example, Saiba, whose gimmick is that he casts a barrier that nullifies physical attacks. And that's literally all he does. Nothing else. I start with 2 lava crystals and 2 thunderstones for 1200 damage. Then the same on turn 2. And on turn 3, 2 thunderstones and 1 lava crystal are enough to finish him off. 3200 HP and 11 items. And finally on the deck, I fight Cabio and Salva. Again, 3 turn limit to deplete all of their HP. And fortunately, Salva is weak against thunder, so I can whack him with thunder crystals to get extra turns. Then for the rest of my turn, I use 4 lava crystals on Cabio to deal 1600 damage. Stroll then dodges his almighty attack. That means I can thunderstone Salva for another 800 damage, finish off Salva with 3 lava crystals, and heal with Great Fairy Dust. And finally, 4 thunderstones are enough to finish the battle. With that, we've gained access to Luis's chamber and we can leave the dungeon. I spent the intervening time building up my friendships. One in particular who is quite useful is Maria. Her friendship will allow me to cook on the gauntlet runner without expending time. This will really matter later, but for now it's at least convenient for getting some extra healing items. Cuculus, also known as Alonso, is also a valuable friend to have. Getting closer to him will make more potent attack items like the lava crystals I used in the last battle available at magic shops. Unfortunately though, that will take a while. Level 7 friendship to be exact, particularly since getting closer to him requires that I raise Hoarder's tolerance. Eventually though, it's time to head into Luis's chambers and ultimately fight Glodell. Unfortunately though, this fight results in the recruitment of Juna. She pushes her other characters aside and fights the next battle alone alongside Hoarders. However, this one has no time limit, which is a huge relief. I focus my attention and my wind items on the doggo first. And even though my damage is nerfed, Glodell appears to only want to heal the doggo. That means that the dog attacks only once per turn. So eventually I'm able to blow down the doggo. That means that only Glodell remains. And his physical attacks are just pitiful. Even his magic attacks can't really touch me. And to add insult to injury, and there's a lot of injury, he's weak against light. That means that after just a few more turns, he gets a glow up, and this brutal section is finally finished. No outfit, don't worry about it. With Luis's boat infiltrated, we're off to Vera Island. Because of my bond with Maria, I can now cook without time passing. I make a coney stew, which will remove status effects from all allies, and I do it again, because I am not creative. But you know who is creative? This insane octopus kraken motherfucker. And fortunately, I already know how to beat him. His Tantacles are weak against lightning. Oh, they're not weak against that. Hold on. Okay, so actually it's the head that is weak against lightning. So I unload my thunderstones and then realize that Juna is in the party, which is bad because she doesn't have the ability to increase item damage. So I start over again, and once her turn comes around, I just remove her from the party entirely and replace her with Batboy. Sadly, the Tantacles immediately wreck me with a massive attack that gets multiple critical hits. And another one, and the subsequent follow-up kind of wrecks. But not to be dissuaded, I strike back with Thunder to nab an extra turn, and then I revive Stroll. And the great thing about merchants is that revival medicine, which normally only heals half of the downed character's health, has its healing doubled. So it's a free full revive, and the Balm of Life item is largely useless. And while I could go after the Tantacles now, that largely seems like a waste of time. So eventually I crack the Kraken, I take a warm bath, and sail on to a tropical paradise. But all is not well. The church is seizing divine relics, namely the Holy Spear Dracodios. And this hot guy with 3 eyes plans to sacrifice his sister to the island's dragon god. Look at those legs, woo! And while it would be amazing to save her, the environmentalists are standing in our way. Oh, and I'm getting word that our on-site correspondent Tantacles is on the scene. Tantacles, what's the situation on the ground? Hello, Tantacles. I'm here with our heroes in front of what appears to be an anthropomorphic tree. It's ferocious, but the tree does appear to be weak against fire, which our heroes are using to destroy it quite effectively. But sadly, this tree is able to apply a regenerator effect. Oh, and it looks like it has completely healed off the damage our protagonists have inflicted. They're gonna have to do some big PP damage to get out of this one. Flamma bottles are only doing a total of 200 damage each. That's a potential total of 1600 damage per turn. And this has depleted about a third of Tree Boy's health. This time though, it looks like he only gets 2 attacks. That means he only regenerates half of the damage our heroes have dealt, and oh my god, Hoarders has dodged an attack. But will they have the momentum to finish the job? Yes. Yes, they will. Back to you, Tantacles. Wow. That was weird. Anyway, Hoarders and company traverse the halls, view the hieroglyphic gallery, and fight the Ear Knife Men. The EKM, if you will. Fortunately, EKM is weak against Thunder, so my team deals 800 damage before using items to lower EKM's attack and accuracy. Debuffs in this game stack up to 3 levels, so I use 3 binding ropes to drop accuracy maximally. Can you let me record? I love you, but I need to do this. Bye. Bye. I love you. I might kill you. This doesn't pay off though, as all of EKM's attacks hit, but everyone survives. I Thunderstone liberally in the next round, heal the party, and go in on damage for the rest of the turn. EKM boosts and strikes on his turn, but his stats are low enough that it's no big deal. So I devote my next turn to thundering and refreshing his debuffs. And joy of joys, he misses his next Stroll Strike, negating his entire turn. That means Heismay is able to wreck these lobes and propel us into the fight with Homo Margo and her dragon. Now is also a great time to subscribe to the Tantacles YouTube channel. And if you're feeling super supportive, consider becoming one of the Fantacles. It costs $5 a month, and it'll get you early access to every single one of my videos. To my current Fantacles and to my super special Yacht Club members, Milky Way and Famine, thank you so much for supporting this channel. You are the braziers of the Tantacles YouTube channel, and thank you for pushing me up. The battle with Homo Margo forces Yufa into the party, but my first move is to remove her since having her present will lower my damage. But once she's out, Homo Margo's wind weakness makes her an easy initial target. I use my remaining turns to lower the dragon's attack stat with Tin Torpors. Unfortunately, Homo Drago wastes a turn getting rid of debuffs with Dekunda, and then he attacks with a Dark Elemental Mudodyne. So I hit Homo Margo hard, and I continue to debuff the dragon's attack. It uses Dragon Breath, but this misses a character, so I'm in good shape still. The dragon continues to waste turns removing debuffs, and eventually I'm able to defeat Homo Margo, leaving just the Dragon Hoe. And what this means is that now Regigigago's turns often get wasted because of Homo Margo's suffering. And I'm grateful because for once the suffering is not mine. Yeah! And with the Homo Dragofish now permanently debuffed, it's not long before he gets taken down. But that's not the end. Homos don't go down that easily, and Homo Margo swims to shore and is ready to fight on her own. Sadly, Yufa is forced into the party once again, but she doesn't act first. So I have to attack a bit before her turn, and you can see that the damage is extremely weakened. And even though she now has a pretty glowing spear, I don't care. She's leaving. We need Bat Boy. And now my damage is back to where it should be. Homo Margo's gimmick then becomes apparent. She changes color, and the color opposite that one represents her weakness. So first she turns blue, which means fire will hit her. And she also removes my team's buffs. But that just means she wasted time. So I hit her as much as I can with fire. At the end of my turn though, I hit her with a binding rope, which prompts her again to remove debuffs, and I strike with a dark attack. Easy. And in fact, pretty much every time I inflict a debuff, she removes it, meaning she basically gets 1 turn every round, and actually 0 when she changes affinity to red. But I lied to you, because my team is weak against fire attacks, and Red Homo Margot has access to Botona. That means she gets another turn, but she doesn't follow up on the same person, so it's honestly fine. And because of my double healing effect, everyone is back in tip-top shape by the end of my next turn. She does manage to hex Stroll, but her next few turns are otherwise pretty uneventful. And just a quick aside here, this AI quirk, when Homo Margot removes buffs whenever I place them, it's a huge weakness of the AI in this game, and it's one that I'll be exploiting a lot in later battles. Eventually, Homo Margot gets smart and invokes a white aura, and I initially believed that this was a light aura, so of course that means dark weakness.
It didn't work.
Why? No!
Well, physics are...
What is it weak against in this form? I don't understand. That looks like light, so wouldn't it be weak against dark? I'm so confused. I am so confused. As it turns out, purple means lightning, which makes 0 sense. 0. But once she's done with that phase, she switches back to blue. Gallica then offers to create a weakness for us, which is very kind, but I gotta say no to that offer. And within a couple of minutes, we say no to Homo Margot. By the way, what are you supposed to do with this boss if you're colorblind, huh? With my least favorite defeated, I have a chat with my favorite lady, Brigitte. She's at level 7 and she's so close to giving me ultimate power. However, that's not available until I progress the story. So I head to Alonso and get him to level 6. I then get my revenge on the giant wormy, and this time I don't get pooped out of its butthole. And the Land of Ceremony is my next destination. This boss has everything it needs to make my life miserable, except pants. It lacks pants. I also head to the Spire of Blind Faith and I roast this. But then it's time to move on, and my next destination is Altaberry Heights. And unfortunately, this is probably my least favorite part of the game. They make you do several fetch quests in the Opera House, and they basically only amount to running around the same area looking for shiny objects. It's not that long if you speed through it, but the first time I did it, it took a half hour. Thank God I've played this game before. Anyway, I eventually get the key and head to the next area. Of course, the reason we're here is for Yufa, so my only job here is to prevent her death. And since the soldiers here use pierce attacks, she just dodges with her dodge pierce ability. On one occasion though, she does get hit with light spells, which she's weak against, and she gets completely overwhelmed. So I die. But the second time is no problem. And with that, it's time to fight Luis. Fortunately, I'm able to immediately remove Yufa from the party and put the A team back in. Also, they ate with this sideways portrait of Heisme. Also, fortunately, Yufa just ran Luis through with a spear in the last cutscene I skipped, so he starts the battle weakened. Luis has no elemental weaknesses though, so this battle is all about playing it safe. I hit him once with wind, and then I lower his attack to its minimum value. Luis though is a cheater, and he uses Soul Cry to gain 2 extra turns at no cost. And with those turns, he first misses a strike on Hoarders, and then strikes him for piddly diddly damage. Those attack drops are really eating. On his next turn though, he does the same cheating move, and then he gets a critical hit on Stroll. And interesting wrinkle, this critical hit inflicts anxiety on Stroll, which is honestly a fascinating status effect. The first effect of anxiety is that the character can't use skills. Boring. But the second effect is that if an enemy strikes a character with the anxiety status effect, they don't use up a turn icon, which is super dangerous. Luis doesn't take advantage of this though, and he can't do enough damage to finish anyone off. So I'm able to cure off Stroll's newfound anxiety on my next turn. Then I heal, so I've come out on top this time. And once I lower his evasion as well as his attack, the misses start rolling in. But also, this boss is kind of stupid. For example, he lowers Stroll's defenses and then just doesn't attack him, which is just odd behavior. Anyway, after one final big miss from Hoarders, one more pinwheel is enough to bop Luis. But the next battle is going to be far worse, because without a chance to prepare, we have to fight Rella and her dragon. And this battle sucks. Particularly since I forgot to replenish my store of fire items, which are the dragon's only weakness. Why do I do this to myself? Well, starting in round 2, Rella casts Quartz Wall, preventing elemental damage from affecting the dragon. And that includes item damage. And that puts me in a terrible predicament. Hitting an enemy with an element they're immune to eliminates the wall, but also takes up 2 full turns. Then I can heal off any damage the dragon dealt, and I have one more turn to take some action. This time, a binding rope. So Rella recasts the wall, the dragon attacks, and a miss means his turn is over, which means I now have to deal some damage. A thunderstone removes the wall, and I'm able to deal 200 damage before I have to heal.
2 hours later.
Rella has access to Mahama-on, which hits my party for super effective light damage, and then a tail swipe fully knocks out 2 party members. And after I spend my entire turn healing, Rella uses Exorcist Light on Hoarders, which will also give her an extra turn. But joy of joys, my friendship with Hulkenberg bears fruit, and she blocks it, preventing disaster. Good job, Hulkenberg. And it takes literally forever, but eventually I deplete the dragon's health to 0, which does not mean that it's dead. But things do get easier because Rella sacrifices herself to restore the dragon's health. That does mean, though, that the dragon no longer has any barrier. I can freely spam items without consequence, and he eventually gets wrecked. Yes! Yes! This stupid battle is over! I could have done so much better, but it's fine. I gotta get ready to fight Luis. My first order of business, which I should have done before, is to grab a bunch more magic items. They're on sale, and I clearly should not wait to stock up based on that last battle. I also start to build up friendship with Katarina, since one of her abilities will be a huge game changer. But even more importantly, Alonso's friendship reaches level 7. That means I now get a huge power boost. I can buy items that deal 200 base damage. Yes, you guys! You guys, we have all of the good items now. Holy hell, that makes me so happy. Oh my god, I can get stuff that does 200 damage to all enemies. That is the face of joy. Not Joy Behar, just joy. So I sell literally everything I can, and Hoarders starts hoarding. The Tower of Insolence is my next stop, mainly so I can reintroduce you to Katarina. Whenever I'm on the right side of the map, she tags along. And when she does, she can reduce the health of an enemy by a huge amount at the beginning of all battles. And that's exactly what she does against the boss of this section. That allows me to use my newly acquired Stormcaller flutes to deal 400 damage per turn and clean up the battle in 1 round. And we'll see more of Katarina later. I also do a brief grind here. The reskinned floaty wormies give Stygian Sutras for free on the kill. These do 150 dark damage to all enemies, 300 after my merchant boosts. But then it's time for Luis. And while he's now at full health, I'm able to deal double the damage. Luis's tricks are largely the same though, cheating by getting free turns. Except now he does absolutely ridiculous damage, and then he immediately takes out Stroll. But my strategy doesn't really change. I revive, heal the party, and get a lucky dodge on my next turn despite the death of Hoarders. But the next turn, he manages to take down 2 party members. So ultimately, I can't keep up with his massive damage output, and I die. Luis's attacks are clearly too powerful for the merchant class, so I ultimately decide to switch things up. I equip all my characters with a brawler archetype to have them learn Health Font, which raises HP by 15%. But that's not the class they're going to end up in, because earlier I recruited Basilio, who gives access to the Berserker class. And this class resists strike, slash, and pierce damage. But will it be enough to fell this fella? We'll see. The Chemist's abilities are still active. I just carried them over to the Berserker, so we're getting off 400 damage per hit. And with this setup, Luis's attacks are now resisted and doing about a quarter of the damage they were before. And even with 2 critical hits, everyone survives. The defenses are just so good, particularly once I reduced Luis's attack stat. It went so well that all I can say is, I won. My hoarding finally catches up with me though, and I become the ultimate hoarder. I love a cerulean moment, but we have to stop hoarding something, and the thing Hoarders stops hoarding is hair color. But we are still hoarding archetypes, and the next fight forces Hoarders to use the Prince archetype. This means that once again, we're taking a hit to our damage. But given this remix of Appleboy has 6 parts, our new multi-target items are going to come in very handy. I'm able to deal 300 damage to every piece of the boss, and the head is weak against wind. It also deals a ton of slash damage, so my Berserker characters will have the upper hand. I'm able to take out the Appleboy's apples on turn 2, meaning he can't heal, and the enemy spends basically the entire turn regenerating. Sadly for him though, he regenerates the head, which is of course the only part that's weak against wind. He does heal slightly, but I'm not too worried about that, particularly since he misses the next slash attack, and then it's my turn to strike back. I just barely missed the kill, and that means he's able to heal. But it doesn't matter, because I'm able to deal double what he heals and defeat him. So we fly back to Grand Trad and finally have access to the end game. And by the end game, I mean Brigitte. Maxing my friendship with her unlocks the upper level merchant class, the Tycoon. And at level 5 mastery, the Tycoon learns Item Connoisseur. And this skill does exactly what Trader Summit does. It adds on another 100% to item damage. That means my old Ice Chunks and Thunderstones and Flammabottles now deal 300 damage each, and all of the upper level items deal 600 damage each, which is actually huge, and it's only gonna get better. But let's put a pin wheel in that. There's also an optional set of side quests that I would be remiss not to try. The Trial of the Dragon. And the first giant lizard is gonna be a doozy. But fortunately, since we're in the Altaberry region, Katarina depletes a ton of the guy's health right away. This dragon, though, repels all elements, so I'm gonna need to employ some crafty strategy to defeat him. And the dragon's first attack in every battle decreases my party's maximum HP. But here's the thing. As I've been traveling, I've been slowly preparing for this boss. Maria, my friend who increases my cooking skills, has been absolutely crucial. I mentioned before that she allowed me to cook without spending time, but she does something else too. She allows me to get a BOGO every time I cook. And the dish that I've been cooking is stale black bread. This item deals 300 damage. And that means with all of my bonuses from Merchant and Tycoon, 900 damage with stale black bread. I'm gonna need every little bit of damage to win. But for now, I keep calm and heal. Not that it matters, because the dragon is very easily able to wipe out my entire team with its breath. So I die. And my next try goes about as badly as the first. My team is just not dodging anything. Okay, well that's another death. On the third try, I go for a debuff-centric strategy, which also does not go well. That sucked. But I ultimately figure out a way to reduce the dragon's damage. By switching all of my characters into the Thief archetype, I can increase item drops and grind the Cyclops enemies. They drop Evil Eye Talismans, which will decrease all stats with only one turn use. But it also does a second thing. The Thief class resists darkness attacks, which this dragon uses liberally. I start by using 3 Evil Eye Talismans, and this causes Draggy to lower my HP as he always does, remove his debuffs, buff his own attack, and then strike, which ultimately leaves only one person damaged. And this pattern reveals a crucial weakness. Draggy does not want to attack unless his attack is maxed out, so I remove his buffs with an Amnesty Talisman, debuff him once with an Evil Eye Talisman, and then do some damage. And the dragon takes the bait, raising his attack twice rather than just attacking outright. Everyone survives the onslaught and things aren't looking terrible until the next turn. I die. So I take a different tack on the next try. Here's my plan. I'm not going to debuff him all the way on the first turn. I'm just going to debuff him once. The reason I do this is that he's going to buff his attack anyway, so this allows me to get off the maximal amount of damage. And I'm hopeful the turn will go well. If you dodged, it would be great. If someone dodged, it would be great. Why is no one... That time 2 people dodged. That was weird. On the next turn, he oddly does not remove debuffs. He just debuffs my party. But on the next one, he gets a critical hit on Heisme, and that basically seals the deal. So one more death, and I just give up for the day. Because everything is awful. I took 3 months off from this challenge after that stream. Partly because I was frustrated and wanted to work on other projects, and partly because winter. I hate snow, guys. I hate it. But soon enough, I was back and ready for action. And also really in need of a haircut. Please forgive me. Anyway, I equipped my characters with the Dark Dodge ability in addition to giving them the upgraded Thief class, the Assassin. And Heisme dodges an attack right away, setting me up for success. And on the next dragon turn, Heisme dodges again. He's literally carrying the entire team. And wouldn't you know it, on the next turn, he does it again. I don't know what kind of steroids Heisme was taking, but he should really share them with the rest of the team. And he fucking does! Because on the dragon's next turn, he blows us!
You need training!
Whoa, everybody dodged, guys. Everybody dodged. And it takes just 3 more pieces of stale, moldy bread to fell this lizard. But that's just one of 3. The next dragon is in the Forsaken Tower, and this one has its own special gimmick. He gets 1,000,000 extra attacks pretty much every round. So as you might expect, I die. But I theorize that this dragon is misbehaving because I have equipment that nullifies fire damage, which I remove. By the way, that dragon raiment came from the last dragon, and eventually I'm really gonna need it, but for now, not gonna happen. Anyway, this time the dragon does not get extra turns, and my dodging appears to be working because a couple of turns later, every single character dodges a fire blow, and seconds later, they do it a second time. By the way, again, that fire dodge skill actually came from the merchant, so that class is doing double duty. Yes, I said duty. I think I'm going crazy. So somehow the dragon beautifully and uneventfully is defeated. But compared to these two, the final dragon is a doozy. Before I dive in though, I buy some reset talismans from the shop. These will remove all debuffs on my characters. And then I'm off to the Spire of Blind Faith to fight the next dragon. I died. Wait, that was weird. Let me try that again. Then I'm off to the Spire of Blind Faith to fight the next... I died. Okay, so let me just tell you the situation first. This dragon has 2 attacks that make my life completely miserable. First, he can charm all 4 characters. That will make them completely unable to heal, damage the dragon, or do anything else. Interestingly though, their weapons are so weak that even though they'll whack each other, that's not super consequential. The second attack, though, is Burn Down, and this attack deals 9,999 fire damage to every character and cannot be dodged. However, it can be negated with the 2 pieces of armor I got from the last 2 dragons and with a very special pair of shoes. The shoes reflect fire damage, which will completely end the dragon's turn. However, there is a problem. The 2 pieces of armor I got cannot be worn by everyone. There's the dragon raiment, which is technically clothes and cannot be worn by armored units, and the dragon armor, which can almost exclusively be worn by armored units. So if I want to do maximum damage, I can have 2 people be immune to fire, except I choose to equip the Masked Dancer class, which can wear both. So I technically have 3 people who are immune to fire, but that Masked Dancer class is pretty weak defensively. So even though I can negate a lot of fire attacks, my characters are just too weak to survive the dragon's onslaught. So rather than fight the dragon again, I decide to take on the next dungeon, and I'll come back to it later. This dungeon, like the final dungeon, largely consists of a glorified boss rush, starting with the Ear Friends. 3 of them to be exact, and while their health pool is larger, the strategy is exactly the same. Hit them with thunder for extra turns, lower their accuracy, and then throw whatever other items I can to finish them off. I'm also delighted to report that with my massively powerful items, I can now defeat Dark Elementals, the most powerful type of elementals, so I'm able to take advantage of their enormous rewards. The next boss is another double-headed lion, and honestly, no issue. But I do get killed by an enemy spawner in the next room, so I've got that going for me. Another Minotaur is next on the menu, and his ice weakness makes him a total pushover. And a Burb challenges me next. While he has some nasty area of effect wind attacks, it is not enough to blow me down, and I burn Burby to the ground. And with that, I challenge the actual boss of this dungeon, Zorbone. His first phase has no weaknesses, but in his defensive form, he resists everything and tries to charge up a huge attack. And Gallica says something interesting.
Looks like we can't brute force through this one.
And Gallica is wrong, because items do flat damage, Zorbone's resistances literally do not matter, and brute forcing through this one is the perfect strategy, particularly since he wastes every turn in this form boosting, which has 0 impact on my team's damage, and then he goes down. For real this time, he gets dropped into the town square in a bloody heap. So with that, this dungeon is complete, but the giant lizard remains. Before I fight the final dragon again, I have some preparation to do. Sorry to edge you, but I know you love it. After maxing out Basilio's confidant or friendship or whatever it is in this game, I give all my characters the destroyer archetype. This will allow them to learn the health vessel ability, which will skyrocket their health even more. And getting enough archetype EXP to learn this skill on everyone is another 2-hour grind. But I do it for you guys. Subscribe? Then, when I fly back to the tower, I make some indestructible honey cakes, which allows me to nullify a single physical attack. Did I use them? No. No, I didn't. But I did make them. But finally, we're back at the dragon. And this dragon, like its friend, has a big problem. It will not attack unless its attack stat is maxed out. So by making sure it has 1 attack debuff every single round, I can waste 2 of its turns. And after a half hour of fighting, multiple huge fire breath attacks, and an unfortunate amount of friendly fire, this dragon is eventually put on ice. And those of you who know this game know that there is one more optional boss. Me. Okay, well, it's actually Hoarders. Sadly, this boss is just impossible. I'm able to stay alive, but after a certain point, the boss gets bored and just whacks my party with an almighty attack that deals max damage. So if you know how to beat this boss with only items, let me know, because I could not do it. And just once for the road, I died. But hey, my goal is to beat this game, and the optional bosses are, well, optional. And I have a big, beautiful blonde himbo to fight. The final dungeon features 6 boss refights, all of which are incredibly challenging. Not! Are the kids saying, said no one now? Said no one! No, seriously, with items maxed out, they are no issue. The Wormy gets frozen, Eggy gets spooky, Apply gets blown, and the baby makes a poopy. And Diabolos Margot, she topples over, and the Tantacles beast, he sinks. Sorry, I ran out of rhyming things. I've been working on the script for like a month, so just give me a break here, okay? And now it's time for Luis. Luis is gonna be a real one. His first phase just sort of floats there and attacks. He can't really get rid of debuffs, and that means he has a fair number of misses. And Heisme is now equipped with the Dodger Ring. This ring makes it so that when an attack misses him, the enemy doesn't just lose 1 turn, they lose all their turns, which happens pretty often. Luis occasionally enters a defensive stance, and if you let him stay in this stance for too long, he'll unleash an enormous attack. But 3 item strikes is enough to change him back and to negate his power play. And even better, Gallica Dominance is in full effect, and she does something that I don't think we've talked about. She literally just hands over 2 extra turns. This is random, but it's absolutely insane when it happens. And because of those extra turns, I'm able to burn down the big boy. I'm then thrust into a conversation with the game's daddy dearest, More, and tragedy strikes. I mash through the button prompts too quickly and get the bad ending. Which honestly is very me. I'm an idiot. It felt really bad though, guys. The Luis fight took like a half hour. Anyway, I have to redo the battle with Luis part 1, which honestly goes fine. And this time I do not mess up Moore's button prompts, so I now get 3 more battles.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
And the first one is a battle with the Diva himself. And while he's not incredibly dangerous, it's a solo battle with only Hoarders, and the game forces him back into the Prince archetype, so my item damage is nerfed. That being said, Moore is not a difficult foe, so it's not too hard to defeat him. So I switch back to the Assassin archetype, and then we're on to Luis part 2. And right away, this battle is a little different. Luis has 3 parts, meaning my multi-target items can finally be put to use to blow 3 heads at once. And I'm sure glad I bought those Amnesty talismans, because Luis boosts all of his stats. And even with no dodges, Luis's damage is nothing special. But then Luis unleashes his special gimmick, which is that he puts a random puppet in his mouth and threatens to eat them. Which is weird, but hey, that's the game, and everybody loves puppets. And as if on cue, Gallica gives my team 2 extra turns. With these, I'm able to dispel buffs and damage the boss. And it takes just 3 attack items to destroy the puppet, meaning I'm not gonna find out what it does at all in this battle. On Luis's next round, Heisme dodges, meaning all of Luis's turns are gone. And Stroll dodges his next attack. In fact, it feels like every single turn someone is dodging, depleting Luis's turns extremely quickly quickly and preventing him from eating more puppets. But my luck does sour a bit when Luis uses a thunder attack, which my assassins are weak to. But rather than take advantage of the weakness to destroy my party, he charges up for a huge attack and readies another puppet. Unfortunately, on his next turn, he uses another thunder attack, but Stroll dodges, meaning he doesn't get an extra turn from the weakness. And because of all of these misses, I'm able to come away with the win. But there's one more phase to go. And while it's gonna be tough, the 6 bosses I fought before have all weakened him. I start by lowering his evasion, and then I'm all about damage. And debuffing Luis was the right move, since he removes his debuffs right away. Again, that wastes his turn. And Luis immediately gets a critical hit on Hulkenberg and causes anxiety, so that kinda negates my advantage. But then both Hulkenberg and Heismay dodge the next swipe, ending Luis's turn. So once I heal, Luis misses his first attack on Heismay, meaning he does 0 damage this round. And Heismay has a big dodge on the next round. Sadly though, Luis does have some tricks up his sleeve. He uses the power of racism to call out the Roussant, which is Hulkenberg's race. That means on the next round, because Hulkenberg is in the battle, she immediately gets taken down. But Luis uses a fire attack next, and Stroll negates fire, meaning Hulkenberg is the only one who died that round and can be revived post-haste. But once again, it's the thunder attacks I'm truly worried about. Everyone dodged it! Yes! And Galagoat gives extra turns right after that too, meaning I'm one step closer to becoming America's next top hoarder. And even when things go badly, it feels like Luis will choose an attack I can deal with. But there's one interaction that saves me. Anxiety is really bad, and as I mentioned, if a character with anxiety gets hit, the enemy doesn't use a turn marker even if the attack misses someone else, unless one of the people that dodges is Heismay with the Dodger Ring, because that ring's ability overrides anxiety and still results in the enemy losing all their turns. But even with all of my good luck, Luis eventually gets mad. He takes his turn as usual, taking out Stroll with an instant death strike, and after using his turns, he uses Soul Scream to gain 4 more. But he uses Thunder next, which is really bad, and Hulkenberg goes down. But Hoarders and Heismay are still alive, and Galaga gives me 2 extra turns. But I don't even need them, because it takes just 1 more demonic icicle to defeat Luis and end this challenge. We have unfinished business. Earlier in the game, I was unable to defeat multiple enemies with items because I didn't have items. But with the power of New Game Plus, I now have them. I can also unequip the skills that make items do extra damage and only use items I would have had at this point in the game just to make sure things are fair. So I run past the first Eggy and into the fight with Homo Gorleo. So once Hoarders transforms, I start throwing items. I go after the apples to prevent healing, I decline Gallica's offer to knock down the other apple, take it down myself, and then blow this guy down with another pinwheel. Stroll becomes a warrior just in time to fight this Nepo baby man, and while Grius can't be controlled in just attacks, I don't really care. My items do far more damage than he can anyway, so I freeze the poop out of him. The nerd bird is next, so I move everyone into the back row and deal a ton of damage with ice chunks. And this is actually easier than it was before. I get extra turns every single time I hit him, so within a few rounds, he's done studying for good. But now it's time for an actual challenge. The dragon. The very first dragon. And you might remember that at the beginning of this challenge, my chat requested that I poke and stroke the dragon some more. So I take care of that first and watch my death count rise to 37. But finally, I'm ready to fight it for real. I transform all of my characters into warriors so they can resist fire, and I begin. Ice chunks once again are the way, since those deal 100 damage and give me an extra turn. And while Stroll does get wrecked immediately, I'm able to revive him and fight on. And whenever the dragon uses fireballs, they do almost nothing. Tail swipe, though, is devastating, especially when it happens twice in a row and takes out 2 characters. So my only choice is to revive Stroll and pray for some luck. The dragon uses 1 fireball on Stroll and he survives, and then another on Grius and he survives too. So I revive Hoarders and carry on. And with a few more ice chunks, I'm able to destroy Draggy and complete this challenge. Click the playlist here to watch all of my RPG challenges, and if you want to watch more Metaphor, click on this video right here. Don't buy a boat, and good night. Bye. It's over!